Welcome to Meet the Voter, meetthevoter.com. And this is episode 11. It's December 27th, 2015, end of the year. Today on Meet the Voter, we have the following panelists. Dr. Nicholas Hernandez, resident artist and progressive Democrat from Laguna Beach, California. We've got Jonathan Denwood, entrepreneur, tech business owner, and social Christian Democrat from Carson City, Nevada. Wave, Jonathan. And of course, our guest today, actually, she's more than a guest. She's one of our semi-regular panelists. We'd love to have Sam back. And Sam Brooks is back. I actually spelled your name. I just looked at my notes. It's Brooks. He is our millennium and a student of political science and an advocate of post-modern politics. She just did like 2 weeks of finals, so she was out for a couple of weeks. How did school go?
It's all good.
That's all good. You're done. You're a new semester.
Hooray.
Is it Long Beach State? Is it Long Beach? Or are you going to JC down there?
Yeah, I graduate from Long Beach City College next semester. So it's my second class.
Okay, very good. So in politics, it's been Christmas time. It's sort of been the off season for the politicians, believe it or not. Meet the Press. This still is not prime time. We're in between, the New Year's. It'll probably really pick up in January. But we watched Meet the Press this week. Jonathan, thank you for the pre-show. I thought you went over the notes real well. Anyone else? I thought it was good. Bernie Sanders came on. The DNC chair came on. It's informative. It was an interesting show. And it wasn't overly, things aren't crazy right now, but it sort of showed how things were going. Got a little bit into foreign policy at the end. So let's open up with Sam, our guest. How did you feel Meet the Press went today?
Unfortunately, guys, I'm going to have to kind of follow your conversation because when I try and stream it, it seems like I don't always get all of the information. It kind of cuts,
that's
from
fine.
segment to segment.
Online is not bad. You can pick up some online. I've been trying to stream.
I ordered it, so I'm going to have it on TV now.
Yeah.
I ordered this too.
I actually do it by my rabbit ears. I don't have regular cable, and we got normal over the air TV. But it was an interesting show. I know you've got some good points, and we'll come back. Nick, what do you think of Meet the Press?
Well, it was great.
Great. It was okay.
I thought it was, what was great about it is that when I tuned in, here's Bernie. And, anybody that's here and watching knows that I'm complete Bernieite. It was the first time when, the last several shows, it's opened with Trump. And finally, here's Bernie. And like I said before, when I first turned the TV on, it was on Channel 2. And here's Bernie on Meet the Press, or Face the Nation. And then I watched that for a moment. And then I went over to Meet the Press because that's more important because of our discussion. And there's Bernie again on an interview. But then they had Debbie Schultz-Wasserman right after him, which I thought was kind of a slap in the face. And of course, the moderator again was saying that, Bernie is avoiding foreign affairs. That's not true. And again, they were marginalizing him. But one of the most interesting things one of the panelists said, and I still agree, is that I can hardly wait for the voting to get started. Because the truth is, Hillary was further ahead of Barack Obama at this point in time in the 8 years ago. And she still lost. So I'm not, and Trump is ahead of everybody. I don't believe he's going to win. I think, and another thing, one last point, is that one of the panelists said he thought, of course, he said Hillary. He didn't include Bernie in this. That Hillary has a real luck of the draw. She's going to go against either Cruz or Trump, and that's lucky for her. Well, look at the polls. The last one I saw was that Hillary squaring off against Trump. It was only a couple of points in Hillary's favor, like 52 to 48, something like that. But if Bernie was facing Trump, it was a landslide, something like 16 points, which is huge. So, but again, I don't trust the polls that much, but that's pretty much what I got out of Meet the Press today.
And Jonathan, why don't you wrap it up and I'll come back. I forgot to introduce myself, by the way. I'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I agree with most of what Nick says. It was great to see Bernie on. It was the same old story. They really didn't want to discuss any policies. They kept asking these questions to start him. He kind of wouldn't have it. He went back, to his normal prayer mat, his normal, he wants to talk about the policies. They definitely don't want to talk about anything of any substance at all. But he kept at it. He did his best. Sorry, what was going to say, Nick?
Yeah, okay. And then there's one other point that I forgot that I thought was critical. That's Spike Lee and what he did about guns. And his rhetoric was great. He was not for one party or another, and his main focus was black on black violence. And he came up with the number of 88. He said 88 Americans die in this country, but it's actually 90.41 if you look at the most recent stats. But
I'm gonna, if you don't mind me jumping in a little bit, and then I'm going to put this to Sam actually, because I like to get her perspective. I had very mixed feelings about it, Nick. Actually, some of the things he was trying to point out, you have pointed out as well, and it's quite serious. But there's also something in me that's a bit nauseated about somebody like him, where he's peddling his film. He's got the branding on his head. He's actually got the branding on his head. He's got the branding all over him, and it's so corporate. It's so just peddling his peddling his. I know it's got to be done, but it's come off it. It's Spike. It's supposed to be a serious subject on a serious, semi-serious political show, and you just got all your branding everywhere, and you're just peddling your next film where you're going to make a ton of money, and talk about divorce yourself from the parts of Chicago that you're trying to represent. I just find there's something really hypocritical and narcissistic about the whole thing. But what's your point of view, Sam?
I mean, as far as Spike Lee goes, or in terms of like the fact that, I guess the last thing I heard was we've had more mass shootings than days in the year 2015. And like, did anyone notice, like, okay, so you have this contrast between the Paris attacks, and then you start having, like, from my perspective, let me know if you agree, but like slightly more representation in the media of mass shootings. Like, you were actually seeing the posts, like if you follow Facebook on, there's another shooting today, where sometimes they don't even write about them. And how it was like total apathy. Like no one shares anything. Like, it was like after Paris, everyone freaks out. And then another shooting in our country, another one, no shares, no posts, no one's talking about it. These articles are having like a couple thousand people talking about it. Like, what do you guys think of that?
I'm not surprised, because they're just average Americans, so the system doesn't really care. There's no money in it. I think that's the main. Well, there is money, I suppose, in the prisons and more. You can sell more weaponry to the police force.
Huge money.
So yeah, I suppose they do care because they can make more money from it. I think the media, most of the corporate, it is corporate media. It's owned by Fox, Murdoch. It's owned by General Electric. If it's not covering stuff that they can make money out of, I don't really think they're that interested, Sam. But maybe I'm a bit too cynical.
Well, I think that what's going on, like every candidate, like what you're saying about Spike Lee, and Rob just put up a great picture of him from today.
Yeah, I thought the brand, the hat,
that's
great. The bridge too far, job. Actually.
Yeah, but every candidate's peddling their own agenda. But I think this is something that really needs to be addressed, and we need to talk about the awareness. However you feel about it, it needs to be addressed. We need to, one way or the other, get these numbers, so much lower than what they are now. It's just an embarrassment. The world is laughing at the United States because of our violence, because of our, where we're at politically. They are laughing, and we deserve it. We need major social changes. And I love my people. I love my country, but we're lost. We're lost in a fog right now. And it's horrible. People are suffering. 47 million people in poverty in this country. I mean, whoa, give me a break. That's astonishing. It's heartbreaking. And these things need to be addressed. So it's a start.
What I have a hard time understanding, or what I think is interesting, is it seems like when there's these identity divides that can be like fixated on, that these sort of things get more attention. So, for example, if the person that's committing an attack, like Paris, is of a different country and of a different religious background or racial background or whatever it might be, it's a lot easier to create this sort of good guy, bad guy role and this enemy thing. And then when we have examples, so like I think the last figure I saw was 380 people having been killed in these mass shootings in the United States. And the vast majority, from what I know, all of these mass shootings were committed by white people, if not white males. And so you have a death toll that's much higher, but no one, but there's not like, it's almost like it feels to me like the people don't know what narrative to go with. You know what I mean? They're like, whereas it's really easy to sort of demonize the people who have committed these other attacks because they're so different from us, right?
Yeah, I don't. And Bill, I really, I understand where you're coming from, but to try and, I don't know what you're trying to point out there, Bill, about Afghanistan.
No, I was just saying. I was doing some. Sorry, Nick, I shouldn't interrupt you. Hey, really, I shouldn't interrupt. We've got a few more minutes before we get a break. I just enjoying. I didn't actually do the intro with me real well, but with that, let's do a 1 minute wrap up, and then we'll go to a break, and we'll go for a 2016 forecast. It is the end of the year, and you guys did a great job just listening and sound. Jonathan, I shouldn't have broken in there because that messes up my sound, and I'm not going to go ahead and stick in my the part I left out until I'll redo it at post show. In fact, I should be saying this on break, not now. But good. Your dialogue's good. I don't agree with everybody out there. Everyone knows I'm the Republican from Northern Nevada. So I probably didn't agree with anybody, but good discussion, good dialogue. And let's go for a break. Okay, welcome back after the break. And we're on to finish up for the 2015. So what we're doing is we're going to start with Sam. And we're going to start talking about what are your predictions for 215? First of all, 215, you want to say anything about that? And then go on to a couple of predictions about 216. What do you think is going to happen?
I think it's been really exciting in the areas that I guess I'm more directly concerned with. Like the year 2015 has been really exciting in terms of different minority groups gaining some more visibility and some more, freedoms. Kind of in an unprecedented way, also gaining a lot of support. So we're talking about like sexual orientation minorities, advancements that have been made in gender equality, even though there's way longer to go. And I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to this at all, but there's been a lot of discussion about trans issues. So the rights of transsexuals, like on the forefront, has been the subject of bathrooms, things like that. So I'm really looking forward to in 2016 how these issues are going to develop and what kind of policies are going to go into play and stuff. I mean, obviously we had, the fact that, homosexuals can now get married legally in our country this year. That was pretty big, right?
That was the Supreme Court. Was that decision this year? I forgot. I know that occurred. It was this year in Supreme Court. I can't remember the Supreme Court decision.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of different kinds of acceptance and support that weren't around not that long ago.
That's a good point to bring up. So what do you think for next year? You think it's going to happen actually?
In terms of the election, you mean?
Yeah, the election. That's a good. What do you think the forecast will be for the election? Who's going to be the two candidates?
I really have this idea that it's going to be Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee. I think that because everyone underestimates the younger generations, they're like, oh yeah, maybe they're doing this stuff on social media, maybe they're showing up to his rallies, but they're not going to actually come out and vote. And I think that they're wrong.
Yeah, they come out. Young people vote in presidential elections. They don't do real well voting locally. That's a fact. Yeah. It's an older voter usually local elections.
Yeah.
Very
So I
good.
think it'll be Sanders and Trump.
Sanders and Trump. Okay. Jonathan.
Yes.
Well, same questions. 215. What do you look back at 215 with the political keynotes of 215?
Well, I think it must be the appearance of Trump, Mr. Trump. You know, the who wants to become American Caesar. You know, but the reality is the American Duce. Yeah, it must be, you know, his appearance, you know, the total inability of Jeff Bush to get any traction, and you know, the kind of fear that Trump has put into the elite of the Republic. They just really don't know how to deal with him, what to do with him. He's really it's like a fox in a chicken pen, isn't it? They're flapping around, and they really don't know what to do. They have absolutely no idea. And I agree with Sam. I think Bernie's unstoppable. I apart from, you know, politics, a week in politics is like 10 years of the real world. So you can never say no about anything. And then you got the security. I think the only thing that saves Hillary a little bit is when, you know, when we are talking. I know it's kind of perverted because everything you've said, Bill, about, you know, Benghazi, her servers, all this other stuff. But when she's talking about foreign affairs, she actually kind of seems semi-credible. And I know Bernie does talk about foreign affairs, but I think when it goes off the actual domestic issues, he comes across a little bit weaker. You know, I do have concern, you know, if it did become Bernie against Trump, I do have concerns about his capacity to deal on a one-to-one debate with Mr. Trump, because he's so domineering and it'd be interesting. The dynamics of that would be really interesting, actually.
You know, Jonathan, I really have to disagree with you about Bernie's abilities to, I think he would crush Trump. I think Bernie, because he's got something on his side. First of all, you know, 4 decades of being involved on the Hill, and Trump has 0. You know, he can be a braggart, he can be, you know, blowhard, all that stuff. But when it comes down to, you know, push comes to shove, knowing about the issues and having experience. And as far as foreign affairs goes, and Hillary, I think she has a notch up on Bernie. She has been, you know, being Secretary of State and the First Lady, she has a bit more experience. But Bernie, again, being on the Hill for 4 decades, he's got plenty of experience. And I love what he's proposing, because it's not just about the personality. I think the issues this time are incredibly important. And I think the Americans are going to realize this president will probably elect 4 new Supreme Court justices. That is going to change history of the United States for 100, 150 years. It's the policies that are going to happen because of that are critical to the whole world. Those 4 justices are one of the most important factors of this election in my mind.
I just want to quickly respond to that. The other thing that concerns me is I really think people on the progressive are expecting too much from Bernie Sanders. It's almost like, you know, the reality is I think it'd be quite difficult when you look at the actual figures. It's increasingly getting difficult for a Republican candidate to actually win the general election as a president. But their ability to dominate the Senate and the representative body, and also, so you could really, you know, saying you're going to do all these things, Bernie, is fine. But if you're facing a Senate and a House of Representatives that's totally dominated to a large degree by Republican or semi-democratic kind of Republican forces, how are you going to get anything through? And also, yeah, you might be right about the Supreme Court, but, that might not happen for a while. That might happen not in the first 4 years. So you might end up with somebody that says a lot of good stuff, but then when they get in, they can't do nothing.
Hey, Jonathan, I'm going to finish up this part. We got to get Nick's forecast again.
Okay.
215, 216, keep a couple minutes, and I'll finish up.
Okay, short term.
About post-show.
Okay, short term, I believe that I've changed my mind about Trump, and I think he is going to get the nomination. I really do. What an embarrassment. I can't believe that. But yeah, I think he's exposed a really ugly underside, an underbelly of our culture. It's sad that people can be swayed by non-issues, by blowing Trump he says the most ridiculous things about vague things about any of the issues. He really hasn't nailed anything down. Gonna blow him to hell, great. But I think that he's going to get crushed by Bernie. And so my long term is still the same. And, there's a point about that Sam was making about who's going to really come out to vote. And I mentioned this before, that Hillary, when, you look at her numbers, that 38% of her people say they're very, that they're very inspired and very, into Hillary, strongly support her. And those are the people that are going to vote. That's going to translate into maybe 41, 42% of the people that say they're for Hillary are going to actually get to the polls. Now, Bernie, he is at 78% of the people that say they support Bernie say they strongly support Bernie. That's going to translate into like 80, 82, 83% of the people that support Bernie are going to be at the polls and are going to vote. That's a critical number. And so I think that's my prediction, Bill.
Okay, so I'm going to finish up for 2015-16. And 2015, what we saw this year, the biggest thing I saw was ISIS expand and just destroy a lot of people, do some terrible things. And I saw the world not necessarily come together until after France. Then after the attack in France, the French actually led the coalition. They started hitting and bombing the fuel lines and starting to fight back. Now we're fighting back at ISIS. So I think this year you're going to see a tide go against ISIS. That's one of my projections for 2015. As far as and that's going to be a big issue still. But by the elections, I think ISIS will be contained somewhat. Not just because of us, but because the whole world is going out after ISIS. The Russians, the Americans, the
Muslims,
Saudis, the Saudis. They talked a little bit about Saudis too today, but I want to go into a lot of discussion. The other thing, here's what I think is going to happen in elections. This, as I said, there's an FBI investigation hanging over Hillary Clinton, which just anybody who knows what she did with that email, she broke the FOIA violations, as I talked about later, Freedom of Information Act. It means the average citizen should have access to those non-classified emails. So she didn't allow that. If people understood that, they could get into her psyche. That's why I'm so opposed to Hillary Clinton for that. But not only that, there's at least 1,000 violations of classified email, and there's some bridging. So people will go to jail. I think that's going to come out this year sometime. I don't know when, but it's going to come out. It's going to be crazy for the Democrats. The Democrats have some really tough times when no matter what, when that FBI investigation comes out, the Democrats are going to have some crazy weeks. And who knows who's going to be the representative? It could be Bernie. And if the FBI comes, I still doubt it's going to be Hillary because of that FBI investigation. But again, everyone's being really quiet about that. So on the Republican side, it's hard to say. I can't imagine Trump being the nominee. I'm not a Trump supporter, not a Bernie supporter, and I'm not a Hillary supporter. So I just can't imagine him being the nominee doing what he's done. He's definitely broken all of the different elements. And finally, I want to finish up with, I think the candidates do best who put the best people around them. I think Bernie has put a really good group of people around him. Unfortunately, he let go a PhD who was 39 years old, who was running his social media and doing a great job. And that's one of the guys he let go. And that was because of that breach coming in from the DNC from their voter vault. Trump, on the other hand, he's hired some pretty good social media people, and he's got some decent people around him. Bush, and I want one last thing as we finish up. The biggest thing you can look at is the change in our presidential campaign process in the last 8 years. It started with President Obama, and he did a great job 8 years ago in his campaign. Again, I'm not a Obama supporter by any means. But if you look at this little jebbush.com, that finishes up the year for Bush. And basically, Bush has a 1980s race in 216 running right now. His father is consultants are all surrounding him, and he's way, way off on the social media and the connectivity to the people in the millenniums. That's Jeb Bush. So if you look at that Jeb Bush and you hit that, you'll see even more so while he's so messed up on social media. And finally, it's going to be a crazy year. Who knows who? I don't know who's going to be president next year. We don't know what's going to happen. It's our best guess. United States will still be here. ISIS will be smaller, and hope the world will be safer. That's what I'd hope for next year. So I'm going to take a quick break, and we're coming back with a discussion about the post show. Well, welcome back from the break. Hey, a couple of show notes that I should have talked about earlier. I want to thank RepublicanMen'sClub.org of Northern Nevada, because they have this live link on, and people can watch it live there. They don't see it through Blab, but they see the live link. Also, New Media Gold has a live link. Anyone else who wants a live link, I'll send it to them. They can embed it on their webpage, and people can watch it live. I just want to thank those organizations for putting it up. Also want to thank the sponsors. And I want to talk a little bit about the post show. Folks, we're going to go on Blab IM for a few more hours on Sunday. And we'll also record for a couple hours on YouTube for those who want to re-listen to it. Two great platforms. I want to thank the folks at Blab for putting this platform up too. This is a wonderful platform. It didn't exist in 215. It's a game changer for 216. And it'll be interesting to see where it is next year. So without further ado, I talked to all the panelists, and the post show on YouTube and Blab, we've got the following. We're going to talk about 15, 20 minutes about guns and violence in America. And I'll be talking about that. I'm coming from a Republican's perspective. I'm a life member of the NRA. Then we're going to talk about gender equality. Sam is going to lead that for about 15, 20 minutes. Income equality is going to be led by Jonathan. And finally, Dr. Nicholas Hernandez wants to talk about foreign policy. So we'll go in those orders. I'm sure we all have opinions and a good discussion. And I want to thank you, Nick. First of all, everyone, go to meetthevoter.com. You find contact information if you want to email Nick. But since a lot of people are just listening in the car or on their iTunes, what's the easiest way for folks to get a hold of you?
LagunaNick@gmail.com or at Ask Hernandez on Twitter.
Okay. Oh, very good. Thank you. We love Twitter too, because, we didn't even talk about, that's a tech side, but we love Twitter. Ask Hernandez. Very good. Sam, how about you?
I'm going to put that up on the board.
I am on Gmail. It's sambrookspolitics@gmail.com, and then Sam Brooks Politics on Instagram.
Okay, very good, very good. And you have a Twitter too. It's at Sam Brooks. What is that?
I don't know. It's connected to my Blab, but that one I think is at Sam BLBC, like Long Beach City.
Very good. And Jonathan, our tech dude.
Yeah.
Capitalist.
Yes, kind of. At Jonathan Denwood. That's my Twitter address. That's the best way. Or just send me an email through my website at wp-tonic.com.
And this is Bill. I want to put my Twitter up too, and we want to thank everybody and have a really happy New Year. But my Twitter, which I like Twitter a lot, it's at podcastershome.com. Well, thank you, everybody. Great show, and everyone stay tuned for a couple more hours on YouTube as well as Blab Live.
It's around the drug industry. But I think...
Hey, folks, we're back after the show. We're on YouTube and Blab Live, and we are recordings for you to hear. If you want to come up and catch the first part of the show, the tailored out and the edited part, that would be on iTunes at meetthevoter.com at the top, or you can go to iTunes and just type in Bill Conrad, and you'll find our shows. And this is co-located with Timelines podcast. Hey, thank you, Jonathan. We're talking about guns right now. We started the discussion. We got into the gang-related issues. And Jonathan was just talking about his thought about the gangs hooked into the drug cartels and the war on drugs. So it sort of migrated to those areas.
So I would legalize, then you got to accept that a lot, the corporations and a lot of manufacturing jobs have been shipped off America. how you're going to get some of those jobs back, how you're going to finance local and regional business to grow, are issues. I also think you've got to do something about the education system. I actually think, like in Britain, I think there's too much evidence, too much concentration of resources on higher education. I think you want a very much more diverse higher education system. But if people are taught decent standards before high school, then they've got a lot more opportunity when they want to go to a certain direction to be able to have the basic skills that will allow them. And there's not enough concentration on basic literacy, mathematics, science at pre-high school level, and there's too much on higher education. I'm not against it. It's not that I don't think it's important. I just think things have got out of balance, are skewed, enormous, especially the poorer. Because I was actually wondering why there hasn't been more more kind of protest and from the student bodies in this country. But I was looking at some statistics, actually unemployment amongst white students and their debt levels, the actual unemployment level is only around about 2.5, and their actual debt levels are much lower. Where a lot of this debt and the higher unemployment among graduate is around these private colleges that are for soldiers and servicemen, and for adults that are coming from poor areas who are trying to retrain themselves so they stand some chance of entering the work market, basically trying to feed their families. The debt burden, not the ability to go through bankruptcy, these debts are with you forever.
Hey, Jonathan, we're on guns. Remember, we're on guns. So this is my 15 minutes of guns. So
yeah, but I think the education, the drugs, and the lack of work, all the jobs being shipped, are all contributing to the gun culture here.
Bill,
go ahead, Nick.
Okay, I have something to say about this. Is just my opinion about gun and gun control. Okay. I think that guns should be treated exactly like another dangerous element that we all use, and that's cars. I believe everybody should have a license, which means you've been given some training about gun and gun handling and gun care. I think you should have insurance, just like a car, so that if your gun does some damage or somebody else does damage, that there's insurance. That and then some background checks so that known felons can't get guns. I mean, these are simple things that could be enacted and would, I think, cut down on the gun violence a great deal and the accidental deaths, all of that kind of thing. I think it would be absolutely impossible and not even productive to go after all guns in this country, even though the stats show
it'd probably be a violation of the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah. So, but just like a car, I see no difference between a gun and a car. Both, the advocates say, guns don't kill, people do. Well, it's the same with cars. So that would be my opinion of how to handle the gun problem here. And I think it would help a great deal if people were, trained and had insurance.
Well, you can't make people have insurance because it's under the Bill of Rights. It's a constitutional right to own a firearm.
It's a constitutional right to own a car.
No, it's not. Actually, it is.
Right to travel. A lot of people argue that it is a constitutional right.
You can lose. Well, let's not talk about that's kind of crazy. But the right to own a weapon, I mean, it's called out in the Bill of Rights.
This is a valid argument that people have.
What the Supreme Court has said and has ruled that and I just dropped in the link here, that as a part of the 10th Amendment, part of the 10 Amendments, the Supreme Court of the United States has ruled that rights belong to the individual while ruling the rights, and that's where it relates to the rights to own and bear arms. that's why our core rights are a little different than other countries, because the writings of our founding fathers said you had the right to own weapons so you can defend yourself against a tyrannical government. That was one of their biggest concerns, as well as personal defense.
Where does it say that?
The writings of Webster.
The right to
Webster is one of the biggest writers of that.
Yeah, but in the Constitution, where it said that the right to a well regulated militia.
Correct. That's part of the Second Amendment. Yes.
Yeah.
And the idea was that the militia can get together because they're independents. They're actually organized by little groups and like the Minutemen were, and come together and fight against a tyrannical government. That's part of the concept of that time, that they could do that. And then that also goes to it works into states' rights also.
Well, interesting. I saw a program about the early, right at the Revolution. And from what I saw, and according to the history that they were presenting on this show, most of the people were not armed. It was a luxury to have a musket. It was very expensive. And the people that did were the people that were trying to form an army, George and the boys. But the average citizen did not have guns. They had to really do a major manufacturing thing because it was too expensive.
I think the main reason, I might be wrong about this, but I think the main reason why they were quite happy to, these guns is they were a bit concerned about all the slaves they had and making sure that if there was an uprising, they could keep all the slaves down. I think it's the dark side of the American Enlightenment. They were really, because wasn't there in Haiti and some other West Indies, some uprisings, and having a well-armed militia and having a lot of people armed was quite handy when you want to keep a load of slaves down, isn't it?
Yeah, Haiti was the first country to blow off a Euro government, and they're still paying for it in the most hideous way. Nobody's really helping them. All that money from that was promised to them, very small percentage has gotten to anybody there, and then they're giving it to corrupt officials. So the people of Haiti are just suffering in the worst way.
Yeah. Anyway, I just want to bring that up, and we'll probably touch about it later. Maybe we can have someone from the NRA come on and talk about some of their opinions, and get somebody from the other side to talk about their opinions later this year. So if you guys work that, I'll work on the NRA side.
We need more people clapping us, Bill. If you're listening, clap. That's it. Keep clapping.
I just dropped in a couple writings. These are the people you have to look at, the founding fathers who wrote about the Second Amendment in detail. George Mason, and some of the other folks. Let's see, George Mason.
Would you mind if I went? Let's let Rob in. I'd love to hear his take on it.
Well, hold a second.
Okay,
we can. I'm going to drop out, and then what I'd like to do is, it's the next one I like. Now, whoever is in charge, whoever's running the dialogue, you need to bring the people back, because you're running for 15 minutes. So the next one we're going to go to is I guess guns and violence was mine, and then we have income equality. Do you want to hit against Jonathan's? Or no, we can go to
that was me.
No. You're foreign affairs.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And gender equality with Sam. Sam, do you want to lead gender equality?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to sign off and let it open up. So you're going to be running this and bring people back to the discussion of gender equality. If they start talking about margaritas in Waikiki Beach, bring them back in.
Oh,
Jonathan, or skiing. Hey, thanks. I'll be back. I'll be listening. I'll be working on the backside, sort of working on the watching everybody's comments. And if somebody brings a comment, I'll try to bring it to your attention. Okay, go ahead, Joy Sam.
So if someone wants to join us,
please do.
Please do. One thing I like, before we go off, Sam, is some people said we should do this show in the early evening, and we get more people watching.
That'd be better for me, because I work until 2 a.m. on Saturday.
Yeah, we were talking about 6 p.m. doing a show at 6 p.m.
That'd be awesome.
What do you reckon, Nick?
I'm
going
easy.
to pause the recording, okay?
Good point, Jonathan. We were going to talk about that.
I'm going to pause the recording, right, while we talk about this?
No.
Let's go ahead. Hey, before we get back into Sam, and who's going to be taking the show for the next 15 minutes about gender equality, we've got a really important topic. Trump used some slang word this week. What was it? We don't want to get in trouble. I'm recording this on YouTube. Sure it was slung. Anybody else out there, look it up and find out exactly what he used.
I know it is. I'm absolutely sure about it. Schlonged.
Schlong. Yes,
Schlonged is the
She got slonged or something.
Schlonged. Yes, slonged.
Yeah.
Here he's slonged. I slonged her.
I'm looking up his statements from the
Trump used some slang this week. It's hard to keep up with him.
The PolitiFact has a list of his statements.
Rob's picture's hilarious.
Yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine if you hadn't been a candidate, how boring the Republican candidates would have been? You know, Jeff. Can you imagine Jeff Bush as president?
Yeah.
Oh, Jeff. You know, he makes a dead sheep look exciting, doesn't he?
What do you use? They talked about it today too. Gosh darn it! They said it on TV. I think the actual word. I think on Meet the Press.
I know what it was. Yeah.
Do you think this is a plan of the establishment to find the most boring candidates possible? So they actually bore to death the electorate.
The establishment came out was Hillary and Jeb Bush. The Republicans are fed up with the. Here's what's happening: is I think it's really interesting to see the difference between the Democrats and Republicans from my perspective. Why are so many Democrats supposedly supporting Hillary Clinton? She represents the status quo, what we had. I guess they like the status quo. They like the direction America's going. Republicans don't like the direction America's going. What?
What?
No, Republicans do not. Republicans do not like the way I certainly don't like what's happened to
Bill?
I don't like what's happened to Obama at all. I don't like the way the country's going. On some issues, not all issues. I don't like us going more towards socialism, less freedom, and
But you equate the two, Bill, and I completely disagree.
Isn't it?
The socialist. I mean, look, we've got.
Give me a break, Bill.
Here's my experience. I worked in and out of government. The bigger government is, the less freedom we have. That's sort of my equation. More government, less freedom.
Bill, can I
what kind of government?
Can I make a remark about this?
Yeah.
Okay, socialism. You look at the countries that are socialist, okay? Strongly socialist countries, you know, the Scandinavian countries, for instance. And how many, if it's so bad, how many refugees do we have from Scandinavia? How about none? They don't feel oppressed. And they have a much more socialist government than we have. They do not feel like they don't have freedom.
Well,
so I disagree with you, Bill. So the two, socialism and less freedom, do not go hand in hand. I completely disagree with you on that level.
See, I think more government, less freedom. Because inherently the bigger government is, they're going to make more rules and tell you more what to do. More laws, more rules. I believe in less rules, fewer laws, and more freedom and liberty. That's sort of my core. That's me.
Okay. No, I don't fundamentally. You know, I think on the progressive left, you got to have you got to look in the mirror, and there is a kind of attitude.
Slong.
You just slong. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for saying that.
No, sorry.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
I'm gonna record again. You can.
Oh, please.
So this is from the Washington Post. I'll copy the link in our conversation. But what they said was, in a long campaign that's far from over, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's comment in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that Hillary Clinton, former First Lady, former U.S. Senator, former Secretary of State, got schlonged, quote unquote, in his 2008 primary run might be considered just another insult. Blah, blah, blah.
I guess we can say slong now and not be. And still
Yes, Lord, you're finished. Yes, Lord.
And of course, it means the F word, which we're not going to
say.
Thanks,
Rob.
It means.
Thanks, Rob. I really appreciate that, Rob. Thanks.
I've read apparently different things in different parts of New York.
You're so creative with your graphics, Rob. The same to you as well, Rob.
So I like Rob. Thank God Rob is the backside.
Oh, cheers.
Rob is the reserve on the backside.
Yeah, he's God knows what he is, some kind of libertarian something.
So what's fun is here's everyone's class about slong. You can go to Twitter and put slong or hashtag slong.
Can we go on to Sam's subject? I think we seem to be spending a lot of time talking about Mr. Trump. And
I'm not finished up and get out of here.
I'd rather discuss Sam's topic.
I just put the hashtag slong Twitter connection because I want everyone to get smarter on Twitter in this group, including me. Right, Jonathan? Yeah. You can be our Twitter trainer.
Twitter trainer.
Our Twitter points at the end of Meet the Voter. Every Twitter twit. Because we just had the Twitter goddess on timelines the other day.
Yeah, Kelly, Samantha Kelly.
By the way,
the Twitter goddess.
As long as we're in the gutter right now as being slonged, we're going to talk about. We're going to give a little pitch for. Everyone should check into WP Tonic this week because this month we're going to be talking about super. What was that? We had a name for the top people on websites. They're not website developers, but they're power users of websites doing well.
I'm going to try and get some guests, Bill, and I've got one.
One of the guests on the show is the sex boss. So
the sex boss. I've got the sex boss. Heather what?
Heather something is going to be on. Yeah, as a power user of WordPress.
Yeah, she's almost got as many websites as you, Bill.
So I'll get on. Hey, you know what, Sam? It's your job to keep everybody on track talking about gender equality.
Go, Bill, and she might stand a chance.
So someone, I don't know. We'll just wait and see if someone feels like coming on.
Please join us, somebody.
Yeah, the subject I wanted to bring up, I can give you guys some different sectors where we're talking about gender inequality, but especially in terms of, our discussions, when we're talking about politics, we're talking about all throughout the history of even the theorizing of politics back to, Plato, Aristotle, and all up throughout, to politics today. This is a sector of life, which is completely dominated by white men, and much like most important institutions in our culture. And so the question I was thinking of earlier when we were talking about it, about how women are treated in politics or things of that nature is, how the system is inherently biased. Does that make sense to you guys?
Well, yes. I need to sort of qualify that because it's white men in the Western and Euro world. Okay, yeah. It's not in Africa or Asia, But yeah, in that world, it's totally dominated by old white men.
Yeah,
for the most part, which is another issue. I would really love to see shorter, term limits on some of the Congress and senators. I think that's an important issue. But the gender situation, I'm almost 70. And since I was 18 years old, one of the things that I realized is that as a human, a culture all over the world, that we had cut off one of our legs and chopped off one of our arms by doing what we do to women. And the cultures have been horrendous. The underlying, it's like a silent racism, which finally in the last 15, 20 years has surfaced. So it's not silent anymore, but growing up it was, and it's a horrible disservice, not only to women, but to ourselves as a culture. It's one of the worst things that we've done to ourselves as human beings, as modern contemporary human beings. We're supposed to be educated. We're supposed to be, different than the cavemen. Well, we kind of weren't, on this issue for sure. And I'm so glad to see. And then, there's something I'm a bit torn about with Hillary. I would love to see a woman in the presidency. I would love to. It's just that this year I can't, because of other political stances from other candidates, I have to go with Bernie in a very strong way. But I would really love to see more women congressmen, senators, in the cabinets across the board. We need them.
Did you see that article I posted recently? And it was about how, so I'm a feminist, and it was about how a lot of feminists are supporting Bernie Sanders and why that is. So it's basically like the argument that, just because someone is a woman, I mean, in a lot of ways you can argue that Hillary Clinton is one of the most anti-feminist representations of womanhood. So, I mean, it's not just for the sake of putting a female in office that she's going to have support from people who are interested in gender equality issues, even though that's one of the primary parts of her platform is I'm a woman, I'm going to create gender equality. But is that really what she's supporting? What do you guys think?
Not sure, but it is, for me personally, one of the reasons that I would support Hillary. Even whether or not her stance is where the bulk of the feminists want it to be, just the fact of having the feminine in there You know, I like I said, I've met Hillary, and whew, she's a tough guy.
Yeah, well, it's that idea though. Just because she's a woman, just to therefore increase the influence of women in politics.
Yes, for me,
Well, first of all, it's like Margaret Thatcher, like, you know,
Merkel. Yeah,
it's like, you know, you can have women, but that doesn't necessarily. And then, you know, it's
I agree.
kind of a potentially regressive side of it, where it's like when we put, you know, like how the issue of having Obama elected to president affected the people that are fighting for racial equality. Because the new argument was, well, we have a black president, so let it go. Like it's all solved. You know what I mean? Like,
I think I was listening. There was a clip about how Japanese were treated in the 1920s and 30s on the West Coast. And there was one gentleman, and he said the city's swimming pool, this is how it worked. I think it was on Sunday they cleaned it. So on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the white people could swim in the swimming pool. And then on Thursday, yeah, like Wednesdays and Thursdays, the black people were allowed to swim in. And then on the Friday, the Hispanics were allowed. And the last people, before the pool got cleaned, the Japanese or Asian people could swim in the swimming pool on Saturday and Sunday morning, and then the pool would be cleaned Sunday afternoon.
Hey, anybody want?
I think when you phrase, and I think it is kind of linked. It's really in the detail and how a society, obviously in this country, to be a female is not the greatest thing. You know, maternity leave is non-existent. Equal pay is still not being achieved.
But this is something like, this is what actually a direct question I have for both of you guys. Because I want to better understand the other side of it. So what is gender inequality to you? And if anyone wants to take this open seat we have, especially anyone from like the opposite.
Please do.
You don't think gender inequality exists, Rob? Anyone? Come
on, Rob. He's so nice when he comes on here and he says a word, but
but this is something I really like about our show and our country, is that we disagree about everything, but we can still love each other.
Okay, so Nick going first. Nick, what do you think gender inequality is? Hi, Carol.
Hi.
So we're just going to go around and answer this question, I think, real quick first.
Okay, the first, it's well, I don't know about answering it quickly. It's a broad subject there. Yeah. There's two parts to it. The horrible way women are treated by our culture in so many instances. That's one part. But the other part, the worst part, is how women feel about themselves, how they've been trained in this culture to, to not be as assertive as they need to be, to not be as, it's almost like a slave mentality that has been put in, and it blows me away. It knocks me out. I can't stand it. And that's the worst, because it damages the actual person, the lady, the woman, the girl. That's the most damaging part, what it does to them. That's the part that is the most obnoxious to me.
Okay, Jonathan, what do you think gender inequality is today?
That's such an enormous subject. I've got to be truthful with you, Sam. I'm probably more conservative on this particular area. I think basically, there are genetic, biological differences between the sexes. But on the other hand, a society, my personal view, a society has the responsibility to give, to provide a reasonable playing field and to provide equality as best it can. I don't think it can ever be perfect. I do agree that in Britain and especially in America, a lot could be done more.
Okay.
You know,
Okay. So now I'm just trying to get a general idea. Carol, it's so great to have another woman on here. So
Yes,
what do
it
you
is.
I think that the gender inequality issue is almost like at this point, some of the women that are in politics now in public service, they have the ability to step up. We have a lot of opportunities. And what's going on, I think, is they're picking these electorate, that Republicans and Democrats are picking who they want. There's a lot of choices out there for women to step up. It shouldn't just be Hillary, because Hillary's under investigation for a lot of stuff, and that's not looking good. And our faith in our I watched C-SPAN the other day, and one of the on the visa waivers, one of the guys stated that the country has 20% trust in the government and 80% don't trust them at all. So they're losing credibility.
Yeah.
And I'm a taxpayer and a citizen, and I obey the law, and I expect certain things out of the people that I elect into office. And I would not expect them to be investigated for gun running, possible gun running, or the emails. So it's like they're creating distractions, and we've got a lot of people that I don't know who to pick.
Carol, what do you think? So I understood what you're saying about, I guess gender in terms of what's going on in politics right now, the election, Hillary, and so on and so forth. Do you or do you not think that gender inequality is an issue that's actively affecting American women today as a blanket?
Yes, it is. It is, it is, and they use it just like they do the race, because it keeps a lot. There's a lot of business in civil rights. I'm going to tell you this. I worked under a federal attorney for 8 years, Richard Darst, out of Indianapolis. There's a lot of money to be made on the civil rights cases, and there's a lot of friction, and women are fighting. And Obama signed a bill when he first came in, but I forget the lady's name. She was not paid properly, and they ruled that she should have been paid all those years. I forget her name, but that was one of the first bills he signed. I think it started with a P. But what happened was they didn't pay her, because they said every time that paycheck came, it was a cutoff, so she didn't get her back pay. But now other women do. So women like that have to step up and fight for, if they're being treated differently. That's what it is. It's not equal. It's if you're being treated differently than someone else that's in the same protected class. And I know this because I'm pretty good on the hostile work environment as far as women go. Mm-hmm. So it's an issue, but it's a lucrative issue. So it's always going to be an issue. So.
Sam.
I think also I've got to tell you, Sam, I've got many faults, but I look upon my career, and I've employed a lot of people, and probably weren't as supportive as the employer as I could have been. But as a young guy, I probably didn't have the kind of understanding that hopefully I've got now. But I really don't care what sex, colour, you could be a Martian. As long as you do your frigging job right and you turn up, you get treated the same, But I have got lady friends, and they tell me about these horrendous managers and these horrendous bosses. I don't know where they come from, and they're horrendous statements. And it's all right for me because I've always worked almost all my life for myself. But when you're a female and you know that you haven't been promoted, and that jerk he's only been promoted because he's one of the boys. Yeah. And you're not, it must really piss you off.
Well, I'm interested because, first of all, Carol, she brought up the subject of intersectionality. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with feminist intersectionality theory.
No, explain that.
It's basically like there was this, discourse of argumentation in the arena of politics over the last, basically over all of time, but, especially since we're talking about in the, the Western world, since the civil rights movement. And so you had the civil rights movement, you had, issues going on with the feminist, movement of the 60s and 70s. And you had these, coinciding arguments where one group is race is the important issue, and the other group is like gender is the important issue, and the other group is like social class is what we need to be putting our attention on. So then this came about to, intersectionality theory. So intersectionality is that all of these issues are connected and affect each other, and we can't look at any one person, one situation, one thing without acknowledging all these layers of institutionalized oppression. Like, for example, political philosopher Bell Hooks, she likes to use the term imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy to talk about what is oppression in the United States today, trying to acknowledge all of the different levels of, things that people deal with. So, some of the things that jump out to me, things that have been talked about recently and that are just generalized truths. We have a wage gap in the United States where women earn 78% as much
74.
as men. We have a reported rate of rape in the United States where 1 out of every 6 American women has been a victim of rape. And a lot of people argue that I think it's generally understood that that's only the number of reported attacks, and that most rapes go unreported for a lot of different reasons. And, issues as well. Like one thing I wanted to bring up, a really interesting article this week was about how women's pain is taken less seriously. So this is just about the way that we see women versus men. So, for example, they did a study that showed that nationwide, men wait an average of 49 minutes before receiving basically attention for acute abdominal pain, and women wait 65 minutes for the same thing.
Really?
And that was talking about how basically these ways that we see women versus men.
Can I slightly?
I'm concluding. So I'm just throwing out some topics, and then the idea was that we can maybe go one by one discussing some of these issues, right? So, Jonathan, you want to go first?
Yeah, it's just I'm getting a bit of echo. Might have to refresh.
I'm hearing.
It seems to have gone there. I don't really know what my response as you were rattling those subjects off. Really, Sam, was that to be absolutely honest, you seem to be drawing a very, very ugly picture of the average guy in some way. And there's a lot of, I've met a lot of female jerks and I've met a lot of male jerks. And I met a lot of really good people, and I'm female and male.
Thank you, honey.
I'm just a little bit concerned that you're kind of not totally incorrectly, but it's just the volume. You're drawing a picture. I see it as a more of an elite, and the consequences of a lack of opportunity and real democracy is the perversion of power. And if you're a female, if you're a black female, if you're a poor black female, you increasingly, as you go down the ladder, you get shafted more and more and more. And I see it as a more right. And I really see that as the issue. Where I obviously, because of your studies and your interest and who you are, but I did were part of some group in London, and they had these type of discussions, and I had to sit in. I'm more of a practicist about what you should really do, rather than try and legislate about how people's hearts should be. Okay. I don't think you can legislate and make people decent, but what you can do is say if you're caught doing really crappy stuff, it's going to cost you a hell of a lot of money for your stupidity.
Okay, so Jonathan, you're talking about me painting a picture and, what that might, imply in terms of men. And I guess what I'm interested in is not what you see about me presenting this factual information to you, but what this information says. Because all I'm doing is transmitting. I real quick picked up a couple topics out of hundreds about some clear, facts we have about what women experience and the inequalities between men and women. So I'm now passing that on to you guys. And what I'm wondering is what you think of those facts, not what you think of me talking about them.
I think I'm aligned completely with you, Sam, and all of these issues. I think they're incredibly important. I think they're more important than Jonathan, and I'd love to hear what Carol has to say about this, because I think it's a major problem, and I agree you can't legislate everything, but a lot of times you can't legislate that you like that you can stop being racist.
Well,
but
Nick,
make sure that
there's loads of people, and I don't know why, Nick, but there seems to be quite a few people that don't like middle-aged, mouthy English people. But
Carol, what do you feel about this?
Right.
I really like Jonathan, and I can see where his point is. It's because I think the environment that we're working in, there's a system at work here. It's a closed system. It's the Gordian knot has never been cut in this system. So in order to persuade and use some persuasion influence, if you will, to change the system, we're going to need to apply pressure. You're absolutely correct, because the Supreme Court, for instance, I heard Scalia and Breyer having a discussion at Harvard, and they were talking about how they go back 200 plus years when somebody brings a constitution to them. You mentioned patronage. Well, in the 1920s, the women didn't even know, they couldn't get their children or anything. The man, you were and basically in court, you still are considered property. If somebody takes your child, there is money involved in that through a 1031 exchange. Now, that never happened to me. Nothing like that happened to me. But I have seen cases like this. So the Supreme Court's going back to the year 200 plus years under a patronage system. So if some chick's going to go up to the Supreme Court, and they took me to the Supreme Court, some people did. It didn't work out for them. I was still able to testify for some folks, but you're going to go to that court for a constitutional right. You guys were talking about arms. They could mean these arms, because it has to do with war and the arms and limbs, insurance. There's a lot of wordsmithing that goes on in the legal system. That's a fact, and I can say it because I know it. Mm-hmm. And as far as the legislatures go, there's reform that's needed, and we have to become aware of the problems and face them and not hide our heads in the sand. That's my belief. That's how I feel.
One thing that, someone's bringing up in the box that we're talking about, which is really, I'm going to ask Deborah if she would like to come up and talk next.
I'll get out then.
No, not now. No. Well, I don't even.
No, please.
But stay put. We have this. A lot of people, when we start talking about issues in the pay gap, in sexual violence, they talk about people being a victim, and I would, personally, that's like difficult for me to even hear, because when someone says that, what I hear is that they don't know what it's like to be incapable of stopping something from happening because you are the person in the situation who's weaker, whatever that situation might be. If it might be how your boss treats you or how much he pays you, or being the victim of sexual assault or whatever. When someone says all you need to do is stop being a victim, what I hear is they don't know what it's like to do everything you can and not be able to stop something. What do you guys think?
Well,
Jonathan,
I can tell you from.
Sorry, Nick, can we go Jonathan? Because I think he's the
Absolutely.
one who hasn't talked recently.
Well, I think there's two sides to that. I think there's the injustice of what happens to the individual. Injustice is injustice. But I've got to tell you, Sam, life's pretty rough. And, there's unless you're
I don't think you know to what extent I know that. I think
I don't think you, but I could apply it to what you know about me. If you knew some of the things I've had to put up with,
I'm sure.
But life is pretty tough, and it can be pretty brutal, and it's not that injustice. You should just forget about it and just say it is what it is. But on the other hand, if you allow it to, in the end, the perpetrators of injustice aren't the type that normally do that, aren't really that bothered about their actions.
Yeah, Nick, we're going to go to you next.
Yeah, right. I'm just waffling.
I think if you guys are okay, we're gonna kind of jump. So please don't be offended if I just get the conversation moving more. Nick, what do you think?
Okay, I'm going to give you some personal experience about knowing what it's like, to be mistreated, to knowing what it's like to feel helpless. I'm a Mexican, a Chicano, and I grew up in a mostly white, a white dominant culture. And when I was a little kid, there were lots of people who sent me home in grade school because I'd come over to play with their white kid, and they'd say, no, you can't play with Mexicans. And then they'd hear me talk. Oh, well, isn't he cute? He doesn't have an accent, and as if that's a compliment. And then just the other day, a friend of my grandson's, we went over on Christmas Day to see my grandson. And when one of his friends, a long-term friend who loves me and my son, we were at the door, and he opens the door and he says, "Whites only." And it was a joke. And then he gave us both big hugs and a kiss. And, I didn't say, "Do you realize that really makes me uncomfortable?" But I'm not going to do that. And that racism that I've experienced as a little kid has never gone away. Yeah. Never. It's everywhere.
Talking about the
feminism
things that we experience, you know what I mean, Nick? Like as a woman, for example, I can give you the same kind of example, which is a couple of days ago at work. I have a coworker who likes to flirt with me as some kind of joke, but he gets there's obviously this very suggestive way that he does it. And while in some situations in my life, I've said something about things like that, I have situations with him and he'll say things to me that make me feel really uncomfortable, and I don't say anything.
Exactly. Me too.
And so I think maybe that's what people mean when they say don't be a victim in some cases. But I don't know. It just seems like I understand why. I don't understand why we don't have compassion for each other and understand, me, how outspoken I am, and that I can still sit there in a certain situation because I'm at work and because it makes me feel so uncomfortable that I choose in that moment not to say anything, but that means it's my fault. Carol, what do you think?
I think that if those if those sort of things are happening to you in the workplace, you need to start documenting, and you need to inform the person in a direct and specific and non-punishing way. Mm-hmm. Look, I really value our work relationship, but I'm very uncomfortable with you coming on to me like that.
But I feel like there's an intensity and a frequency at which these things occur for any young woman, especially if for me, it often has to do with it being obvious that I'm homosexual, or with other women I know that are more feminine. It's, in different wavelengths, but it's that it happens so often and all the time that in the midst of it, you're like, I want to live my life, I need to get through my day. At work, I'm like, that made me really uncomfortable. I need to go check on this table and make a living. It's that it's so often that sometimes you're just like, forget it,
Yeah.
Not that I'm disagreeing.
But
you're right.
If you let it, if you let it, but if that person continues, it usually, if they're abusive in any way, it will heighten. He will feel like a criminal who's been allowed to get away with robbing a bunch of houses. He's like, I'll just do one more.
Have you guys ever been in a situation like that where someone says something that's that
I've been
a bunch of
attacked. I
people
was
realize
attacked
are
at work.
wrong, and no one says anything. Like you're just like, it's so uncomfortable, and you're just kind
Just
of
the other day.
yeah.
But I'm a white male, was middle class before I came here. Spent a lot of money. My ex-wife spent it for me. No, she didn't actually. Been playing the victim there.
There's and you had another part to your question that I didn't get to even discuss, and I forget what it is. I apologize.
Well, I thought it was. Are you talking about my question?
Mm-hmm. Your topic.
Okay, so one thing, I just like it because this article just came out. So I'm going to post it in the feed, and it's really beautifully written, and it's an awesome story, and it is talking about, the real subconscious institutionalized gender inequality. And so it's an article for The Atlantic, and it's called How Doctors Take Women's Pain Less Seriously. And so the subject, it's written by the husband of a woman who went into the ER because she was experiencing severe abdominal pain. And she was, I think it took over a day and a half for her to be attended to through her being ignored, not taken seriously, and, like mix-ups and so what was actually happening is her ovary was like turning over on itself, which is something that can kill you. And so he used this situation to talk about what has actually been researched, this nationwide issue where if you have a man and a woman who walk into the doctor or into the ER for, they always ask you on a level of 1 to 10 how painful it is. Mm-hmm. So when men and women claim the same level of pain, women wait substantially longer to get attention from a doctor, because the idea being that we think that they're exaggerating, or there's other arguments as well.
We're relying on their patients so that we can run the bill up on them. Every minute they're in there.
Well, Nick, what do you
don't understand that grandmother of 8 is like, look here, I need somebody now. Yeah. They would be attending to me, but I have a different. I'm tougher because I'm older and I've been through it on these issues, and I have. Went through it for 8 years and then worked in the legal profession for a while. That's my hobby. I love researching the law. So these gender issues, though, the way the constitutions are written and the way that the United States Supreme Court will go back 200 plus years, then the states out here are going by legislation and statutes and codes. And then you go to the Supreme Court and their main thing is the Constitution. And they're going to go back to that time, and they're going to talk to the people who put their autograph to the Bill of Rights, and they're going to talk to Hamilton. And they showed it on the stage where they were doing this, talking to him in that time frame. I don't want to go back 200 plus years with my gender because it's going to really suck. It'd be like being married to an Amish guy or something. You know what? I'd be like, no, I wouldn't last a minute.
Well, that's an interesting part of the argument as well, though, is a lot of people, the first thing they're going to say is it's because men would insist on being seen and women wouldn't. And it's funny because every woman I hear talking about it is like, well, I would insist, but I'm sure there's these other women out there that just sit and wait patiently and won't talk to
you have to, because they will retaliate against you.
My reaction to this, Sam, is I don't really quite know what to say, really, because the women I've dated, I've only been married one, but I've had some long-term. I went out with a Norwegian lady for 3 years, and I tell you, mate, she was in a hospital and she was in pain. The doctor would say something pretty abrupt. So, so I think it's also the cultural element,
or Jonathan, on the in terms of what you're saying, like the women would say something. Is that argument really? Does it have any foundation in reality, or is that another sexist view of women, that women are just going to sit there passive? Because I know I wouldn't. I would say I need help now.
I don't think you would. I I'm
Show me all
disputing.
these
I'm not
women that
disputing the research because obviously I haven't read the research, haven't seen the statistical.
I posted it for you though.
You know, but what I'm basically saying is, I don't know where these timid women that just sit there and act, because the ones I've got out and know
There's the echo again.
don't match up with that. What the picture you're trying to put to me, it just doesn't. It doesn't click with me.
But yeah, it's more like one argument that we're kind of agreeing fails when we're trying to discount this research. So we're still at this place where there's this institutionalized, subconscious difference in the way that we see men and women, where on such a level that it can be studied, compared, and then confirmed. When a woman says she's in pain, we take it less seriously than when a man says he's in pain. I just think
my natural reaction to that would be, in my experience, it's been the opposite. The woman has been treated much quicker, and
But I'm telling you that nationwide, it's the opposite.
Well, there we are. But I can only be honest with you when you say that. I'm only basing it on my own personal experience. When I've seen friends, males, their actual pain has been dismissed more regularly than a female. So I can only tell you that. But on the other hand, if you give me factual, if I read that research and I spent the time,
look into it. I posted the article for you.
Yeah, obviously, I would study it, and obviously, if it was that, I would have to change my natural position on it.
Hey, Nick, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you on one level as far as sometimes not saying something is not it's not a cop-out for me. It's because just what you said, I want to live my life. I've already decided decades ago to not ever hate anybody because they're a racist, even if they're, a strong racist. That's their problem. And I don't want to have to carry it around with me, which is why I didn't say anything when this young man opened the door and said whites only, and he thought it was so cute. I want to be a free man. And I don't want to carry this around. I don't want to carry this angst, So every day when I meditate, the first thing I say as I'm going into my meditation is that my family and I and all people, we forgive all people and we forgive ourselves. And I need to do that as a constant, because every time it comes up, I have to think I have to forgive these people. That releases me. But I think it's, Jonathan, I don't really think that you recognize how egregious this situation is. Maybe because your personal experience, you treat everybody fairly, and I know you do. But
I try to.
I know you do, but I don't. I think you're not really seeing the gravity of this situation. That's just an opinion I'm giving you, bud.
I just think, but it's odd when you said that guy said, I wouldn't have taken that. That's your personal choice. I would have confronted them.
But you haven't. Oh, well, I mean, I don't know this, but I've been in that pool my whole life, and at first there were times in my early, late teens, early 20s, and, through the hippie years when I did take offense on, I was prickly about it. If anybody even said it, hey, wait a minute, well, I'm over that now. Okay. I'm over it. I'm letting people be their good or bad selves. It's their choice. I can't let it affect me because it can tear me apart. Yeah. It can make me sick. I could physically end up being sick or crazy or something crazier than I am. Yeah, but I don't want that to happen.
I understand, but I do think it's slightly unfair, because I do believe that women shouldn't be discriminated in employment. If they're as good as the job as anybody else, they should be promoted. If they're as good as anybody else, they should have the same money.
Rob,
if they want increased maternity rights, they should have it. I believe that people should be treated fairly. So, but
guys, I have a question. I guess I don't know. In terms of, gender inequality, it makes me feel a lot. I get this thing a lot because I study a lot of racial inequality. That's actually the primary thing I study. And feminism is just a different part of my life and a different, list of things that I read about. But in racial equality, oftentimes, for example, recently I brought up the issue of economic inequality between races in terms of, talking about homelessness, and so when you have a level of poverty that's 3 times as high in one racial group and not the other, it seems as though that would be relevant to talk about. And the person I was talking to said, well, if you want to make it about race, and I was like, I'm not making it about race. It is about race.
They're not your horses.
If this is affecting one group 3 times as much as another, then that makes it a racial issue, right? And I feel as though we come to that same divide in gender, where when I'm saying that there is vast, expansive, and institutionalized gender inequality in our world, I'm not saying that men don't experience difficulty. I'm not saying that men aren't victims. I'm not saying that men are all perpetrators or anything like that. It seems like some men interpret that as being part of the argument, If I'm saying that women are so unequal, it means that all men are bad, or it means that men don't also have difficulty in their lives. And that's not really the case,
Excuse me, Sam. I'm going to check out for a minute. Let somebody in. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm going to wait till he comes back, and then I've got to be off. But I really think it's how there is a line somewhere where you can take this wherever you want to. I just believe that you treat people as the way you would want to be treated yourself. You treat, I think we're really, I think a lot of people do things that aren't really that conscious about what comes out of their mouth and their own personal actions. And they think everybody lives in the same world as they live. And then you got another group where they actively want to inflict suffering, pain. And then you got other people that are quite compassionate. So you got this whole jumble of reasons why people are doing stuff.
Carol, what were you going to say?
I think it's the system. If people would, there's a sociotech system going on. There has been since World War II, at least, at Tavistock, when there was a big miners' accident, these mines. Mm-hmm. So it's called a sociotech system. And the system is what's running the humans, because they started interacting humans with the machinery and the mechanics and the technology. So now they're so segregated in their little departments that they don't know what's going on beside them in that cubicle, or the treasury or the land records. They're disconnected. But at one point, all of that stuff connects. So it's a very simple fix. They need to start putting in their search logic some parentheses and some brackets and some of the language they use on the backside of this, and make it transparent, but not opaque. Mm-hmm. Make it truly to where you can see what's going on, and let's correct this, because it can be corrected without ruining the system. The system, though, the automated system, is running the folks, including the courts, the voters' boxes, all of this, the human interaction. I'm a human computer. We were computers first. Then we started working with the machinery and the computers, and now we've got cell phones in our hands, and that's a good thing. There's a lot of opportunity that you wouldn't have without this. I wouldn't be talking to you folks, but it needs to be managed properly, because in researching these things, they purposely set off detonations, if you will, in their systems when they're studying people. I worked at a plant for 15 years at a facility like this, and I would see the teams get riled up over here over this issue or that issue, and they would do personality tests called DISC analysis, and that test would tell you what your strengths were. You'd get that part, but the HR would get the part that said, don't put her with a person like this type personality. So what do? They would put me with a person like this, and I would have to overcome that obstacle, and I did just fine. But it's a big, it's like this sociotech system. It truly is a system, and I can see the system, the binary system, and the numbers, the way they run them, and I can see the big picture on a lot of this stuff.
What does being a victim mean to you? What does that look like in real world? Do you think that women on a wide scale
would be painful, but I would
victims?
Well, it would be painful, and I would have to take my emotions aside in order to deal with it. That's the type of personality that I have. So, and I've had I've had a 700-pound pallet pushed over on me from a forklift, all kinds of stuff. So, and I stuck with it. But that's just the kind of personality that I have, and I was raised by a very strong woman. So, if you feel, I don't like to be called a victim. Somebody wrote a story about some of the stuff that's happened to me, and they said woman's family victimized in the Chicago Critical Post, and I was upset about that. I said, you're making me sound like I'm a victim, and I'm not a victim. What happened is people, if somebody's doing but there are truly women who are victims.
How so?
I can't say, I don't want anybody,
How so?
Oh, let's say that some young woman gets raped and she's beat about half. That's a victim.
Okay. What do you think of, but I mean it really in the context of when I hear someone say, whenever I've been on the show and I brought up, more or less the issue of gender inequality or gender differences, someone in the comments always says, stop being a victim, or someone I'm talking to on the show says people need to stop being victims. And it breaks my heart because it's like, it just feels like they're so disconnected from,
you have valid.
What it's like to deal with certain kinds of oppression. And I don't understand why we are so, I guess, separated from each other, that when large groups of people come forth and say, this is happening to me and it's a problem, this is happening to me and problem, like Black Lives Matter, et cetera, these things are happening and we need support and help and so on. Our first thing is to think that they're lying, they're being victims, they're complaining, they're lazy, they're this, they're that, they're whatever. I don't understand.
The brain mapping that's going on. Have you heard of the brain mapping project?
I know, like vaguely, but I don't really know anything about it.
Well, brain matter is a matter, right? Black matter is actually, there's wordsmithing going on in some of these committees and congressional meetings and congressional there's a lot of wordsmithing and it's being played upon by the media, who most often is not. Some of them are fine, but there's a lot of them that are not. They're told what they need to report. I know that's how it is here locally. They're told what they need to report. So you have to find good sources, not like the Onion. I was reading something and it was from the Onion, and I'm like, what is the Onion? I thought, wow, the cops are
that's happened to everyone at least once before they figured out what the Onion.
I've got to go, folks. But it's nice chatting. But
I think your segment's supposed to start, isn't it?
I've got to go. I'm sorry. Okay. See you later. Bye.
Because I have to get going soon as well. You
guys are killing me. You're killing me, Sam. You did a good job. We're training. These guys got an F. You got a B. So they don't like me grading them online, but you did good.
I have to get going, but thank you for having me. And Carol, it was nice to talk to you.
You too.
So
yeah, have a great one.
Hey, so Carol, some of the ideas is we're trying to make a cadre of commentators, people learning this environment. I was just talking to somebody back in Washington. So each of these folks, Dr. Nicholas Hernandez, he's really come from nowhere in the social media. Hi, Nick, you're back.
Great.
Jonathan's been around, and we're trying to sort of lay out, like in 40, 45-minute segments, different issues that they can go into deep detail in. And we thank you for coming up. But I'm going to give him a hard time. Jonathan always complains to me, I'm pounding him online. I'm trying to be fun. But
by the way, Carol, thank you for coming on, and please come back. You added a great deal to the show, and thanks a lot.
We always appreciate people coming. So what happened? I stepped away for a second. Jonathan took off.
Where'd he go?
So what we'll try to do next week is we're going to go to Sunday night next week. And what I want to do is we'll have the little 40 minutes, or not 40 minutes, 25-minute max iTunes. And what we'll do is we will make topics for you guys. Each pick a topic that you want to go into for about 35 to 45 minutes. But it's your job to run the show when you have the topic.
Exactly.
And learn it.
Perfect.
I'm in the process of learning. There's just a lot of stuff to do.
Absolutely. And when we get, we still haven't,
well, Nick, yours I'll go on with you. You had foreign policy.
Yeah. I was hoping that we'd had a Jonathan or Sam or anybody else back on, so we can all interact. Okay. And I would love for Deborah Hart.
She's gone.
Has put some really great. No, she's still up there.
Oh, she's yeah.
And she's put some great messages up. And I would really, if you can come up, Deborah, that would be wonderful. Everything you've said is spot on, and always love to have Rob there. He has his opinions, and they're always good. And he Well,
so let's talk about foreign policy. That is your issue, and let's talk about 30 minutes. What I've been doing while you guys are off is I've been actually tweeting people and really getting Twitter working in and out. I've been tweeting the NRA, other groups, said, hey, why don't you guys watch? Come on, why don't you make a difference, contribute, and that's how we grow the show. I'd like to see the show grow to thousands of people listening to it, which I think can happen in the amount of time as we get. But we have to really have good content and really come across well. Have good sound.
Hey, Bill, what was behind you there? There were a bunch of little square lights that were in back of you.
And that's
on your screen. It was interesting.
Really, you never know. Blab is such a neat platform. What I do know is when you start getting bad sound as a co-host, when you're managing it, it's better just to pause, let the person refresh, and then come back and bring up the dialogue. The podcast is going to come out well this week. I know it came out well last week. It'll come out well this week. So let's talk about foreign policy. The foreign policy in 216. I wish and we all need to prepare in our one area. My foreign policy is I'm so busy working, but it's from the days when I was over in Afghanistan for 5 years working in that part of the world. That's where I'm best at. But this was a terrible year. Nick, reference foreign policy. What do you want to? It's your show, so let you direct it. I'll be the guy here, and anyone else is welcome to come on in foreign policy.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, for everybody in the world at this point in time, it's ISIS, ISIL, and the jihadist terror groups. That's pretty much on everybody's mind, and something that we all have to address, both within ourselves and within our governments and how we participate. And I think that a model has come up. Have you noticed this week they were trying to take back Ramadi, and what they did was instead of going in and carpet bombing and all that, they were putting a noose around them and cutting off their supplies. They were cutting off all the routes where weapons and manpower could come in. And once that happens, then, they're going to run out of ammunition. They're going to run out of food. They're going to run out of all the necessities. And then they're going to go in and surgically take out the jihadis. And I think that is a perfect plan for all of ISIS, and I know they're growing quite a bit in Africa, but they're losing ground in Iraq and they're losing ground in Syria, the two major fronts, and they're losing some ground in Afghanistan. But
I'm not sure about Afghanistan.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure either. I've heard you've got those little lines again on those little square things. How interesting!
I don't see them on my side. If we're recording this, maybe I'll see them afterward.
Yeah, but so I think that that's a perfect model for how to defeat them. I think what we need to do is, and of course, Bernie Sanders talks about this a lot, and he's laid these ideas out, which is, I'm echoing some of them, is that we need to destroy the oil fields, and big oil is preventing that. Oh, because when it's over, we're gonna be stealing the oil again.
Nick, I got to challenge you on that. What do you mean? What do you mean by stealing the oil? Because I've been in that part of the world, and I know, for example, when I was in Afghanistan, guess what the United States got out of Afghanistan for all? Guess who got all the contracts in Afghanistan? The Chinese. Mm-hmm. Chinese had all the big contracts to mine the copper. There's a huge amount of copper. Mm-hmm. And I forgot what the mineral was. There's a mineral the United States was trying to do something, but the Chinese were the biggest contractors. And then the Indians had contracts. We had nothing. And let me tell you about these contracts in Afghanistan. The ministries that came in, because we empowered the government, and this is like in 2007 and 6 and 7 when they wrote these contracts, they all got rich, the ministries, because they did, were paid off by the Chinese to have these big grants for these mineral rights. As far as I know, the United States got nothing. We got nothing in that part of the world. And it makes sense that China would be the natural country to help them mine.
And how about Iraq?
Iraq, I
was told that we got
I don't know. I'm not an
a huge amount of oil from them, and but bringing it back to right now, I think that it's Turkey, Iran, and China, from what I've read, that are illegally buying oil from ISIS.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know who. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Turkey, Iran, and China. Now, if we put pressure on all of them to stop buying, and then put economic pressure and political pressure on the Saudis to stop giving them money and weapons, then we will squeeze them off and they'll dry up. And that way we don't have to go in and kill hundreds of thousands of civilians. I just think stop them economically, stop the weapons.
When you say them, be careful with words. You said hundreds of thousands of civilians. Civilians do get killed more, but not intentionally. They get
of course. I'd never said intentionally, but I do know that there's hundreds of thousands. The numbers in Iraq are the lowest number I've ever heard of innocents is 250,000, and then I've heard as high as 1.5 million. And but the lowest number I've heard is 250,000. So with this battle, those numbers could be similar. And of course, most of the victims are Muslims, which we have to really be cognizant of. The fact that that's why the millions of refugees are escaping this terror, because the most damage is being done to them.
Oh yeah, it's war zone. Two people don't like war zones: soldiers and refugees and combatants. Those people in the war zone.
Yeah, nobody likes a war zone. I mean, nobody. So, and in terms of foreign policy, I think that's probably the most important issue right now. But then our presidential race, because of the effect that we have on the entire world, I think our presidential race is a part of foreign policy that needs to be recognized. I'm certainly hoping we elect a fair and compassionate president.
What's interesting is Sanders and Trump, some of their policy are lining up similar on foreign policy. I heard Trump has said he wants to take the oil. That's one of the differences I've heard. Yeah.
And it would be easy enough right now to just bomb the oil fields. That would stop the production. It'd be simple.
What I heard why they didn't bomb early on in the Obama administration is because of the environmental impacts. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's
I don't, because they can do it without causing big fires. It's the equipment, the refineries and things that need to, I believe it's money. And from the things I've read, it's all about money. People, the big oil, and I don't mean just big oil from the States, it's the international oil cartels don't want them touched.
I don't know. That's interesting. Because what you normally do in a war is you destroy their infrastructure so they can't get anything. You destroy the refineries, the oil. Everything.
Yeah, that's the first thing.
That's the first thing you do. Yeah, you cut them off. It's sort of like surrounding them.
And why have we not? That's the big question. And that's the question that.
Well, you'd have to ask the President Obama, because he's, in his State Department. This is 100% Obama right now. 100%. Anything that's happened is Obama. Period. You agree with that, don't you? Right now.
Yeah, like the great place our economy is. That's Obama.
I mean, any time, no, but the war though, when you talk about the actions that have taken place the last 2 or 3, 4 years, it's all driven by the Obama and Obama State Department and his people.
I agree.
So that's his policy. He hasn't blown up the oil. Why hasn't he blown up the oil?
Well, from what I've read, it's pressure from the big oil cartels around the world. And
I will concur that I believe that Obama, the middle of the United States, is all controlled by a special interest. I mean, all of these guys in the middle. I don't think the outskirts are. I don't think Bernie is. I don't know about Trump. I don't think Trump is either. But I agree that Obama
Trump
and
is
Bush,
totally. I believe he's totally not ruled, but he's a 1%er. Makes no. Doesn't claim otherwise. Look at his tax plan.
I think Trump is out for Trump. I think Trump is out for Trump. Most people are in some aspect, but I don't think he's controlled by special interests right now at all. I mean, self-funded. And why I don't think Bernie is too. I think Bernie's taken most of his monies from. He might have some special interest being the public employee, the unions maybe, but
he won't take big money from them. You know, he has a $2,500 cap.
Yeah.
He won't take big money from anybody, and I love that about the man.
But I'm just saying that middle is kind of scary. I've always seen it for 20, 25 years in the United States, between Republicans and Democrats. Pretty close, not exactly the same, but pretty close to the same. And on their policies. I'm trying to find information online about environmental engineering in Iran and like in the oil fields.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's been discussion. I'm not up on that. You know, I know what real intelligence looks like when you're like in the intelligence centers and you get to do this every day. You're just nothing but studying. And you've got some people doing nothing but social media. Some people getting this intelligence, land intelligence, you know, listeners, different folks. It's really neat to work in one of those I did that, you know, for a few years. And that's all you do all day is what we're doing is you're trying to figure out what's going on. That said, the media has a role to play in trying to get, you know, honest and true news journalism. Journalism is supposed to be unbiased, real journalism.
Yeah, I suppose there's a lot of things that are supposed to be that are.
In the Army, I can tell you about PSYOPs and straight journals. There, you know, we have information operations, which is PSYOPs, which is our propaganda. And that's a division of the military called psychological warfare. It's in that I'm in civil affairs, civil military operations. You have PSYOPs, and then you have your public affairs. Public affairs is supposed to be pure journalism and not slanted at all. Even Army public affairs and reporters are supposed to not slant. They can't say anything, I guess, over the top, but they've got to be neutral. And then and they work with the press. And then you've got PSYOPs, psychological warfare, which is propaganda. But that's within the battlefield. It's not outside of, you know, Afghanistan or Iraq. So just saying those are the parts. I'm trying to find any information on the oil in Iran, what's going on. And I don't know why they didn't bomb it. I don't know why they didn't destroy the heck out of it.
Yeah, and one of our watchers here just posted something about the chief Obama didn't do it because of environmental reasons. Well,
yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I've heard. I haven't.
Yeah, but you know, compared to what ISIS is doing, that just seems like a ridiculous argument, and I don't care if it was published.
You got to look at the argument. You got to look at where it is.
Yeah, I just don't believe it. You know, I don't believe it at all.
The Examiner. So that's from the Washington Examiner. Put those articles up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, lots of things are printed that are just not.
You got to
really
look at PBS, a Charlie Rose interview, and who did they interview? You dig down through it, and some of it says like they didn't want to destroy the fragile infrastructure.
That's a good one, Rob.
Yeah, I just can't imagine why they didn't just destroy all the oil fields. I mean, you hate to do that after they've been built up because some things you do too is sometimes you take bridges and infrastructure and you try to protect them because you might want to use them later.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. But I think what they're doing to actual humans are more important at this point than the economy or even the environmental aspects at the moment. We've got to get their brutality stopped. It's got to be stopped. It has to be. You know, we need to get the extremists out of anywhere. Any extreme views are just that, extreme and inappropriate.
I saw a pretty good word. I've been trying to get this Daesh that came up a few weeks ago. Daesh. And that's a French word. And it's actually not fully developed yet. It's not categorized and it's starting to evolve. And it's a word that I guess it sounds similar to a Arabic. I can't even say the word. I can't. My mind is gone right now. I'm trying to think too. It's not.
Sorry.
Anyway, it's supposed to mean in language cutthroat. The interpretation is like cutthroat or sounds like cutthroat.
Lovely.
And
jeez,
that's what it sounds. That's what it means. So you're calling them cutthroats instead of, and the idea is the Islamic countries don't want to recognize them as ISIS being a state in itself, which is, I understand that point. I understand what the government's trying to do by not using the word ISIS or ISIL. The Army started using the word ISIL. I heard ISIS later on. And ISIL is Levant. And that's what the Army initially started using.
Right. There's a territory called the Levant. Yeah.
It's an ancient description of an area.
Yeah. Parts of Syria, Iraq, Turkey, parts of that area. Obama uses ISIL quite a bit.
But that was what the military was using. And then ISIS came up, but he started using, trying to find it. Arabic language. I'm trying to, anyway, the evolution of the sound of the hey, anyway, so we could probably tighten this up, finish up today.
Okay.
I'll record this. It'll take me about an hour to get this up on iTunes. I'm really proud of doing that. That's one thing I like to do.
Great
if you look
job.
at the website, so we'll do it next week, probably come up around 5:30 and we'll record between, is that work for tomorrow, next week? Is that too early, 5:30 Sunday?
I'm easy. You guys decide what you want to do, and I'll do it. I'm loving the format. I love looking at the map and seeing where all over the country people are coming from. And by the way, to those listening, we've been preparing for a launch after the first of the year, and it's going to be better. And we're improving daily. Thanks, Rob. And I think we're going to turn this into something. Bill has got something going here that's really valuable, and it's a lot of fun. Wish you could come
really
up,
hard
Deborah.
to figure out the best time too. And you look at the different ones. What I was trying to do today, and what I want to do next week, we'll do like a half an hour show for iTunes. But I really want each of you, whoever's going to come on, and we can line people up. I'd like to come on for about a 30-minute segment of somebody coming on to lead the dialogue. Now, the people qualified to lead are like you, Jonathan, myself, and Sam, people who have worked it and can lead. Now, a guest can come on with you, but I want one person taking charge during that 30 minutes to try to keep it on conversation.
On
You have
track,
to
yeah.
use like hand signs to bring it back. And it's
Okay.
definitely on YouTube. What's nice, one week I was downstairs working and we just had the computer open. We've got a good one with good speakers. We actually have some really high-end speakers we got for Christmas that use that connect and make really nice sound. But you can just listen to it like a talk show. So that's the direction. But I think we'll probably finish up for this week. And it's been interesting. There was a show that got very similar to ours. It got 3,000 or 4,000 that Jonathan came up on. So if anybody wants to come up, they're welcome to come up. I like Rob. Rob is definitely part of the show. I want to bring him in as part of the show.
Did you see what his latest picture? Daesh.
That's good. I remember that. I had a box of soap from the Middle East, and it was sort of English, and it looked like Tide, and they had all sorts of words spelled wrong. It was so funny. Oh, underneath it says, keeps dirt with us, or something completely opposite. It said, washes away dirt. It says, keeps dirt close, or something. I kept that box, a little tiny box of soap I got, and they had misprinted it. It's sort of funny. Deb can relate to that. Those funny things we saw over in the Middle East.
Roxanne, you want to come on?
Well, Roxanne, I haven't seen Roxanne. Roxanne, where have you been? Roxanne, by the way, runs a lot of the backsides of my shows and helps out and keeps me on track, make sure I'm recording things of that nature.
Oh, in her car. Okay. She's just listening.
That's good.
Okay.
We do a lot of shows, and we do tech shows. Sometimes I'll listen. We do a show like for iTunes, and then it goes on when Jonathan has these top people in WordPress across the country come on. I'll pull out my iPhone, plug it in, and listen as I'm driving. And it really is nice. It sounds really good. The sound coming off this platform, every once in a while it goes goofy, but overall the sound is excellent. It's really a great platform. I hope this continues and builds this platform.
Yeah, I think it's great.
It's and did your friend ever come on? I remember him. He was up here for Burning Man.
Yes. His computer that he's been watching us for most of this program, and he's loving it. So he wants to chat this week, and I'm going to try and convince him to come on because he's one of the most interesting humans I've ever met.
Well, Nick, I'm going to need you to market that course down there and teach people how to take a Chrome book. I can tell you more about Chrome. Chrome and book and Google is a great combination. And keeping everything in the cloud. And you've got Nick's doing everything with a Chromebook he bought for about $260.
$272 out the door. Can't believe it. It's so quick. It's the most user-friendly computer, 15.6-inch monitor, an amazing camera, everything about this book. It doesn't have that much. It's only got 16 gigs on the hard drive, so that's not a lot of memory. But because it's Chrome, you've got the entire cloud.
It's solid state. and it's got 4 and 16. 16 is actually quite a bit as long as you learn to use the cloud and you pull it down with the cloud.
Right.
So
with
you
the
could
cloud,
pull,
it's
you
wide
could pull,
open.
You could pull a presentation. Plus, what's really nice is Chrome. If you learn to use all of the Google applications and learn more, that saves so much money. And for you, that's really all you need. I like Apple because we do some other work, but Chrome, you could survive on Chrome left and right. Now, you can't maybe do the development. We can do some development work, but I want to talk to you about your mic right here. You're using this mic. So you get a Chromebook for a couple $100, and you have Wi-Fi, and you use this mic, and you notice that there's a little connection here. So this goes right into your earplugs, and that's all you have to do. And it works. It plugs in USB. Sometimes you have to recycle the USB, but you've come a long way in the couple months we've been working on this. So,
well, I have to thank you.
And
you've given me a great education here, Bill.
So what I'd say,
this is fun. It's a lot of fun.
The next thing I need to teach you guys, we all need to become experts at Twitter. Tell you what, to tell the truth, is the intellectuals 40 to 60 are using this Twitter stuff. Even younger. I mean, it's not the really young people, but maybe 30 in business. We're using Twitter. They do what they call as a DM, and it's really a nice way to track and do. Twitter's pretty amazing platform. If you learn, it's hard to explain, hard to grasp, but once you get into it, you see, wow, this is how that works. You learn how to DM people, send messages. It's a pretty fascinating little platform. So what did Rob put down here? It was a good show. Watch and reply. Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming on. I want to thank Blab, of course, for the platform and doing what they do. I'd like to see our audience grow. I'd like to see us get bigger. We need, on iTunes, we need 3,000 people to make any money to get a sponsor.
Well, we're about to do launches that are going to help us a great deal.
Yeah. Well, until we get up over about 1,500, 2,000, I'll probably keep us on timelines right now. So every Sunday on Timelines, which is timelinesofsuccess.com, it's a really ancient channel I have. We'll keep it there and we'll see how it grows. When it gets up over 1,000, we'll start moving on to his own channel.
Schwarzkopf just died.
No, Schwarzkopf died a while back.
He did? Oh, okay.
Schwarzkopf died this year. You know, year in review, we didn't talk about that. The year in review, Schwarzkopf died a while back. I was actually a visiting aide to Schwarzkopf once. I was activated after 9/11. I got to take him around. You know, being a city councilman, vice mayor, and then being back on active duty, we'd visit some cities, do some things, did a little work with them. Interesting.
Did you see Deborah here, Bill? You know, you need to augment with Periscope. Well, Deborah, we have had Periscope on a couple of times, and we do plan to have it more. And you know, if other people want it, other Periscopers are interested, please jump on board.
You know,
really great.
They were using Blab, though. They were using Periscope. What was the guy's name in France? He was really good. Euromeister. How would we? I'd like to ask Deborah if you want to come. How do we augment with Periscope? I know you're the Periscope expert. I'm not a Periscope expert. How do you augment with that? So I know Deborah is. So we do have a tech show. So anyway, stay tuned to the other shows. So this year, Nick, I think it would be good for you to go up and just practice blabbing, set your own blabs up. I'll help you get your own channel and start blabbing in Southern California. Get that local Southern California group. Let me tell you before I finish up, I'm going to pull something up here. I hate to open another blab platform here, but there was a show, and I'm going to pull it up, that did amazingly well. And they had good graphics too. Maybe I need to put some graphics up. Sometimes I got questioned on graphics though. I didn't think they're that important, but graphics, I guess, are important. That's not where I want to be. I'm trying to go, let me see if I can find this show. It's right there. If they didn't move it, you get like new noteworthy. I'm going to put a show up. I'm going to drop this show in. It was called Politics Central. It originated out of Santa Margarita, and it was during the weekday last week
in California.
Yeah. And they called me ahead of time, and Jonathan actually came on, and they got about, let me see how many viewers they got. They got only 130 live, but they got 22,528 replays and 7 shares. So they're up like a new noteworthy in this new aim. So they did well. I just stuck them in, and that was hosted by Howard Klein, who I think a lot of people are still on holiday right now too. That's why the people will come back.
Absolutely. And starting next year, at the first of the year here, we'll be more structured, and the frenzy is about to start. Once we get through these holidays, the presidential election is going to just go really wild, and again, I can hardly wait for the voting to start. That's going to really tell us something. So,
and we're a caucus state here in Nevada. So we're one of the first states, first 5 or 6 states to vote. We're getting good commercial. By the way, we didn't talk about this. Bernie Sanders has got some pretty, Rob just pulled up a copy of it. That show, I looked at the stats. It did 130 people initially visited it, but it was the replays because they got up new noteworthy. It's like new noteworthy for this platform.
Great.
And Nick, I'll go.
Okay, me too.
Wait, wave.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks, Rob. Thanks.
And Rob, I thought Rob Hicks came on for a second. Did I see Rob? You can bring Nick back on if he needs to. Hey, I want to thank everybody and meet the voter, meetthevoter.com. And that's a good place to start. Take care. I just recorded. You look good today. You look great.
I don't want to get involved in politics because you can't.
We'll turn that out to go way to end. I don't want to get involved.
When we were buying